For thousands of years, the Tsar Dominion ruled the stars with fire and iron. Their war fleets were unmatched. Their soldiers were born to conquer. No enemy had ever stood against them for long and broken entire civilizations. To them, war was not chaos, it was tradition, a science, a game they had already won. But everything changed with one strange message. It came without warning, one word, incoming. It wasn't from their ships, it wasn't from any known planet, and it wasn't in Tsar language. High General Kelter sat in the command hall, the cold glow of starlight bouncing off his silver armor. "Where did it come from?" he asked. His voice, like steel, dragged across stone. A young technician swallowed hard. "Unknown source. High General." It bypassed all encryption, even the deep code. "Impossible," Kelter said. But the word was, "they're repeating." One elder chuckled. "They are barely a species. They haven't even colonized more than a few dozen systems." Another added, "We let them live out of mercy." Kelter did not laugh. Something about the signal felt wrong. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a warning. No, not a warning. A promise. He tapped a button on his throne's armrest. "Send 3 destroyers to the edge systems." No trace, just silence. 3 days later, a mining colony on the planet disappeared. The Tsar sent a cruiser to investigate. It vanished. 2, and then the skies cracked open. Deep space scanners picked up something huge, dark, and fast. It didn't match any known design. It moved like a shadow, absorbing radar, but not like theirs. No banners, no signals, just a black shape sliding through space, silent as death. "This is a warship," said Commander Vrall, standing behind him, "but who's human?" Kelter muttered. "That's impossible." The High General stood slowly, eyes fixed on the screen. "Send the fleet. 20 warships, 5 elite fighter squadrons." To dreadnoughts, they all jumped toward the last known location of the unknown ship. Only one made it back, and its pilot was no. The lasers didn't touch it. It moved like it knew our strategies, our codes, Kelter demanded. The pilot's eyes were wide with madness. It didn't look like anything. It was the void. It swallowed our shots. It tore us apart one by one. It didn't even speak. It just judged. The feed cut. The council demanded answers. How can one ship destroy an entire fleet? Kelter's fists clenched. It's not just a ship. It's a challenge. A declaration from the humans. The Grand Speaker asked. Kelter nodded. They sent no ambassadors. They're sending a message. What? Message, a minister whispered. Kelter turned. The Dominion began to panic. More colonies went dark. Transport ships vanished. Trade routes collapsed. People fled central planets. Fear spread faster than light. On Tsar Prime, the heart of the Dominion, alarms echoed for the first time in centuries. A red moon rose, and with it, the shadow, the human battleship. It didn't decloak, it didn't threaten. They don't want our surrender, Kelter said. They want us to feel what they felt, to understand powerlessness. Shall we fire? The weapons officer asked. No, said Kelter, staring at the silent vessel above their world. We already lost. Under alien fire. And then, it showed what came next. Human ships, human weapons, human fury. It ended with a final message. Now we understand war. Others surrendered to the rising human fleets. But the battleship didn't fire, the screen still glowing with the image of the silent human ship, he whispered to himself. We taught them war, but they learned it far too well. Outside, the sky remained quiet, but everyone knew the war the Tsar thought they could never lose was already over, and they didn't even see it coming. The great warship still floated above Tsar Prime like a god carved from shadow. It didn't speak, it didn't move. But the entire planet trembled under its presence. For the first time in history, the Tsar Dominion declared a planetary lockdown. Were ordered underground. Spaceports were sealed. Communications were jammed, but nothing could block out the fear. High General Kelter stood inside the war chamber, staring at the black shape through the ceiling dome. His commanders waited silently, the tension thick in the air. Moved? He asked. No, sir, Commander Vrall replied. No weapons fired, no shields raised, just ... watching. Kelter's voice dropped low. Send a message. To who? To the humans, Viral hesitated. We don't know how. 3 elite Tsar scouts were ordered to approach the ship. Each piloted the fastest stealth vessel in the Dominion. They were to scan for communication links, weaknesses, anything. Their ships vanished the moment they neared the vessel. No explosion, no debris, just gone. One technician broke the silence. Sir, It's not attacking. What do you mean? Kelter asked. Their ships weren't destroyed. They were taken. Like, absorbed. Varel's voice shook. Then why aren't they attacking the capital? Kelter answered softly. Because this isn't a warship, It's a statement. Far from Tsar Prime, on the edge of a dying asteroid belt, a group of surviving Tsar warriors gathered. Exiled, broken, ashamed. Among them was Commander Rallick, the only officer to witness the first encounter and live. He had scars across his face and a missing arm. Replaced with crude sight. The fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed. They think the war is over, he said to the others. But I saw that ship. I felt it. It's not a weapon, it's justice. Another warrior asked. What do you mean? Rallick stared into space. Didn't understand what humans became. We hurt them. We destroyed their worlds. But instead of breaking, they changed. Into what? He paused. Into the thing we always feared. Something that fights not for power, but for pain. The others looked away, ashamed. They're not just here to win, Rallick said. They're here to make us remember forever. Back on Tsar Prime, Kelter met with the remaining council members. The chambers were dark. Only 6 of the 12 still remained. We must retaliate, one said. Launch everything. On what? Kelter snapped. They've jammed our sensors. We can't even see where to aim. Then evacuate and go where? They're everywhere. Silent, watching. One old minister leaned forward. We made a mistake. We taught them pain and never thought it would return to us. Kelter's eyes narrowed. You think this is revenge? No, the minister said. This is balance. That night, the human battleship finally moved, not forward, not toward the planet. It rotated, and for the first time, its weapons became visible massive barrels, glowing dimly with blue energy. Each one larger than an entire Tsar city. Then it opened a channel. The sound wasn't a voice. It was a pulse, deep and rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. Each pulse sent vibrations through the planet's core. Volcanoes rumbled. Oceans stirred. Then came the whisper. Not in Tsar tongue, not in human language, but in something older. Pure emotion. We remember. Panic erupted. Cities rioted. Military leaders demanded counterattack. But Kelter raised one hand. No. The room froze. If we strike, we die, he said. If we run, they follow. Then what do? Someone shouted. Kelter looked up at the ship again, the heartbeat still pulsing. We listen. Kelter entered the ancient memory vault, deep beneath the capital. It hadn't been opened in 1,000 years. There, he found what he needed. Of the first contact with humans, it wasn't war, it was peace. The humans had come in peace, offering trade, knowledge, friendship, and the Tsar. They laughed. They sent one planet to fire, then another, and another. No response until now. He returned to the command hall, holding an old artifact in his hand, simple pendant, human-made, a symbol of unity. They wanted peace. He said to Vral, we gave them war. And now, Kelter turned. Now, they've become the masters of it. Suddenly, the battleship powered down its weapons. All lights dimmed, and a single shuttle launched from its underbelly. It moved slowly, gently, like it had no fear. It landed outside the Capitol dome. Kelter prepared himself. He walked alone to meet it. No guards, no weapons, no tricks. The shuttle door opened, and a human stepped out. Not armored, not threatening. A woman scarred but calm. Her eyes were like twin storms, quiet but deadly. She spoke. You remember now? Kelter didn't answer. She held up a small data crystal. This is what you gave us, she said. A history of your conquest. We studied it, learned from it. Kelter nodded. And now the woman looked up at the sky. Now we teach it back to you through destruction. She shook her head, through understanding. Kelter looked confused. She stepped closer. This is not a war, she said. It's a lesson. Then what happens next? She placed the crystal in his hand. That depends on how well you learn. And with that, she turned and walked back into the shuttle. It rose silently into the night sky and disappeared into the dark, where the massive battleship drifted quietly. No weapons fired, no blood spilled, only silence, but it was louder than any. Warkelter looked down at the data, crystal glowing in his hand. He understood now the humans had not just become powerful, they had become something else: unstoppable, unforgiving, unbroken, and worst of all, patient. For the first time in recorded Tsar history, no military orders were given that morning. No ships launched, no weapons charged, no declarations of war. The skies above Tsar Prime remained eerily quiet. The enormous human battleship still hovered, in orbit, silent, unmoving, but very much alive. High General Kelter stood alone in the central observatory. The data crystal, the human woman, gave him pulsed faintly in his hand. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten. His mind was replaying her final words over and over: that depends on how well you learn. He didn't understand the full meaning yet, but he knew one thing: this was not over. Not by a long shot. In the War Council's emergency session, ministers argued. "This is psychological warfare," shouted one. "They're trying to make us surrender without a shot." "They've already won," another whispered. "Can't you feel it? The fear, the silence, the stillness in space. This is domination. We still have weapons. And what good are weapons when the enemy doesn't attack?" Kelter walked in, voice like thunder. "Enough." All heads turned. "No more fear," he said, "and no more denial." He placed the glowing crystal on the council table. "This ... is their war now." The crystal was decoded. It held archives of human suffering, a silent library of ruined cities, fallen soldiers, massacres, and betrayals by the Tsar. Each entry wasn't just a visual, it carried emotion-recorded pain, fear, rage, and loss. The Tsar ministers trembled as they experienced the memories firsthand. A mother screaming as her child was taken during the siege of Terra Nova. A soldier breathing his last under Tsar boots. A village erased because it asked for peace. It wasn't just history, it was a confession from humanity, not of weakness, but of transformation. The final entry showed a human commander, her face calm but eyes burning with resolve. "We asked for peace. You gave us war. Now we've mastered it better than you ever could." Across the Dominion, cracks began to form. Smaller worlds declared independence. Tsar colonies deactivated their weapon systems out of fear. Entire legions went silent, waiting for guidance. But the battleship never moved. Not a single laser beam, not a single shot fired. And yet, it was everywhere. News channels, civilian talk, underground forums, all filled with whispers of the black warship and the woman who came without hate or mercy. The people called it the Judgment Ship, and they began to doubt their leaders. On the mining world of Frelk's 7 Tsar soldiers argued among themselves. "We must strike," barked Commander Tolan, "or the humans will think us weak." "We already look weak," said one of his officers. "We've sent fleets. They never returned." "That's coward talk." "No, it's survival. That ship, it's not here to destroy us. It's here to show us who we are. And who are we?" The officer didn't answer. But deep inside, they all knew. They were no longer the galaxy's apex predator. Back on Tsar Prime, Kelter summoned his closest advisors. He spoke softly now, unlike the proud general he had been days ago. "We trained for war," he said, "but never for this." "What is this, sir?" asked Fral. Kelter turned to the window, watching the ship high above. "A war of silence, a war of memory. That should we prepare a counterstrike?" "No. Then peace." Kelter closed his eyes. "They don't want peace. They want understanding. And if we fail to give it, then they'll erase us the same way we erased their worlds." In secret, he contacted the human ship. No council approval, no protocol. He stood in a dark room, alone, with an old communication relay, used only in emergencies. The signal wasn't secure. It didn't need to be. He sent a message, one sentence: "We are ready to listen." The reply came minutes later. Not a voice, just coordinates. He took a small crew aboard a transport vessel and launched toward the given location. Ruined moon that once held a forgotten Tsar prison. Colony now. It was silent. Dead. But the human shuttle was there, waiting. Kelter stepped out onto the moon's surface. It was cold, lifeless. Dust rose around his boots. The same human woman was waiting this time, wearing no armor, only a black uniform with no rank insignia. "You came alone," she said. Kelter nodded. "If I brought anyone else, they'd try to kill you." She gave a faint smile. "We've seen worse." He looked around. "Why here?" She pointed to a broken tower. "This is where your people tortured our prisoners, where you left them to die in silence. We reclaimed it to remind you. Silence remembers." He looked down. "I was a soldier," he said. "I followed orders." "So did we," she replied, "until we realized your war wasn't just about victory, it was about domination. And now," she walked toward him slowly, "now we bring balance, not through destruction, through truth." Kelter asked, "Then why show us the ship? Why the silence, the fear?" "Because fear opens ears. Silence makes arrogant voices quiet. And sometimes, the absence of fire is louder than the flame." He stared at her. "You could have destroyed us." She nodded. "But then we'd be no different than you." The meeting ended with no treaty, no handshake, no promises, only understanding. Kelter returned to Tsar Prime with new eyes. He spoke to the council. "We are not at war," he said. "We are in judgment. They didn't come to conquer. They came to remind us who we were." And now, Kelter looked out the window again. The ship was still there, still waiting. He smiled faintly. "Now we decide who we want to become." Across the Dominion, changes began. Schools removed Tsar war propaganda. Statues of ancient conquerors were taken down. New leaders rose, those who valued diplomacy over power. And above all, one silent ship remained in orbit, watching, waiting, not with anger, but with patience, because the humans had learned war the hard way, and they were giving the Tsar a chance. Just one, but it was enough for now. The Tsar Dominion had once believed they were the center of the galaxy. But now, one silent ship in the sky had done what entire rebel fleets could not. It had broken their pride. The Judgment Ship, as it was now known, had not moved in weeks, yet its presence was reshaping the galaxy more than any invasion ever had. Inside the palace on Tsar Prime, High General Kelter stood in front of a crowd of students. Not long ago, he would have lectured them on battle formations, orbital strikes, or how to crush a rebellion without mercy. But today, he said something different. "We called ourselves Masters of War," he began. "But we never once asked who was paying the price." Silence filled the hall. Now the ones we ignored, the ones we hurt, have returned. Not for revenge, but for truth. A student raised her hand. "But why don't they attack us, sir? They could win easily." Kelter looked up at the hovering battleship through the ceiling's transparent dome, because victory was never their goal. "We taught them war. Now they are teaching us something else." Across the Tsar systems, change was slow and painful. Factories once used for weapons, tribute now received aid. But not everyone was ready to change. In the shadowy depths of the fortress moon Davos, a secret council had gathered generals, warlords, and one exiled minister. "This surrender is poison," spat General Joran. "We kneel before a ship that hasn't fired a single weapon." "You call this surrender," barked Minister Krell. "I call it survival. You saw what it did to our fleets." "They used fear to make us weak," Joran growled. "Now they want us soft." A younger commander stepped forward. Krell narrowed his eyes. "And if they retaliate, then we remind them who the true masters of war are." The plan was simple. A prototype stealth missile, untraceable, undetectable, would be fired from deep space. No signature, no warning. If it hit, the Judgment Ship would fall, and if it didn't, they would deal with that later. The launch was set. For midnight back on Tsar Prime, Kelter couldn't sleep. Something was wrong. His instincts, the ones that had kept him alive through a dozen wars, were screaming. He activated the old military network, now only used for emergencies. Nothing. Then he saw it, a faint blip on the outer edges of the defense grid. It's a small, to be a ship, too fast for natural debris. A missile. He slammed his fist on the alarm panel. "This is Kelter to all stations. Unauthorized weapon launch, possible strike on the Judgment Ship, intercept immediately. But it was too late. The missile had no propulsion trail, no electromagnetic pulse, no way to track its exact location. Kelter raced to the observatory. The judgment ship still hovered above the planet. Still quiet, still unmoved. And then, it did move. For the first time, the dark vessel shifted slightly, rotating to face the incoming missile. A bright blue field shimmered for a second. Silent, graceful, and then impact. But there was no explosion. The missile simply vanished, absorbed the ship's surface. Pulsed once, like a single heartbeat, then silence again. A signal appeared in the sky, projected across every screen on Zar Prime. It was the human woman again, no anger on her face, just disappointment. "We're warned," she said. Kelter stepped forward. "Wait, this was not from our government. I swear it." She looked through the screen as if she could see his soul. "We gave you time. You used it to plan betrayal." "No," he said. "Not all of us. Many of us have changed." Her eyes narrowed. "Then prove it. How?" She paused. Then the screen blinked off. Moments later, a new signal came through, encrypted, direct. Only Kelter could access it. Coordinates another. Meeting. The location was a floating research facility above a dead gas giant abandoned during the first Zar-human conflicts. Kelter arrived alone once again. The human woman was waiting, this time with 2 soldiers behind her. She didn't smile. "You said, 'Not all Zar are the same.'" She said. "They're not," Kelter replied. "Some still believe in old power, but many of us want peace. Peace means accountability." "I agree." She stepped aside, revealing a screen. It showed images of the rogue strike team on Dravos, their faces, their plans, their secret meeting. "You will arrest them. Publicly," she said. "If you do not, ... we will." Kelter hesitated only a moment. "Consider it done." The trial was broadcast across the Dominion. For the first time, Minister Krell's screams echoed through the court as evidence. Played, people watched in silence. Some were angry, many were ashamed, but deep down, all of them knew this was justice, the kind they had denied others for centuries. When the trials ended, the judgment ship finally began to move, not away, not in retreat, but in a slow orbit circling Zar Prime like a silent guardian. Its message was clear. "We are still watching, but now, we trust you to decide." Kelter walked outside the palace that night, breathing the cold air. The stars above seemed brighter. Now, beside him stood a young student from the academy. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "Maybe not. It doesn't scare me anymore." Kelter nodded. It shouldn't. Fear was never the lesson. Reflection was, we build a new kind of strength, one that doesn't need war to survive. Far above, the black battleship gleamed under the twin moons. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its silence had already taught. The judgment ship continued its silent orbit around Zar Prime. No weapons were aimed, no demands were made, but its presence still gripped the hearts of the Zar people. Every time someone looked up at the sky, they remembered the screams of the colonies they had once conquered. They remembered the silence that followed the disappearance of the human fleets, and now they remembered the trial broadcast across every screen in the Dominion where there once generals were exposed for planning the strike against the human ship. Zar was changing, but change was slow, painful, and not everyone believed it would last. Deep beneath the capital, inside a hidden archive chamber, High General Kelter reviewed classified files that had been locked away for decades, records from the earliest human contact. There was one file marked Operation Emberfall. He opened it, and what he saw turned his blood cold. A list of planets, human colonies, civilian targets, and beside each name, one word, erased. "This wasn't war. We did this," he whispered. No wonder they came in silence. He closed the file, but the guilt didn't fade. It grew heavier. He looked toward the ceiling, as if he could see the battleship still circling above. "We don't deserve mercy," he muttered. That night, the skies shimmered. A second human vessel entered orbit. Smaller, sleeker but built with the same black metal design. This time, it sent a signal. A real message. Kelter stood in the main hall with his command team. The voice from the transmission echoed, We come not for war, but for truth. Prepare your leaders. A reckoning begins." "What does it mean?" Commander Vrail asked. Keltura's face was stone. "It means they want more than trials. They want exposure. They want the truth seen by everyone, not just us." Soon after, human envoys arrived, not soldiers, but historians, investigators, and a single AI drone that hovered silently behind them. They requested access to the Tsar Dominion's great archive, the sealed library of all military campaigns, colonization events, and operations since the Dominion's birth. It had never been open to outsiders or even to most Tsar citizens. The council panicked. "They'll twist the records," one minister shouted. "Make us look worse than we were." Kelter replied coldly, "We were worse than we believed. Then we erased the evidence." He slammed his fist on the table. "That's what tyrants do. That's what we used to be. We won't hide." From this, after a long silence, the council reluctantly agreed. The gates to the great archive were unlocked, and the truth poured out across the galaxy. Tsar citizens watched in horror as old reports were released to the public. Videos of planetary glassings, audio logs of civilians begging for peace, photographs of children left behind in rubble, each record authenticated, each pain now shared, the Tsar Dominion. Once proud and feared, was now ashamed and grieving. But the most shocking revelation came not from the past, but from the present. The human AI, during its research, uncovered a hidden project, Project Silent Grasp. A secret lab. Still operational, still experimenting on captured human survivors. Kelter couldn't believe it. That project was shut down decades ago, he shouted. The AI projected a live feed, dark chambers, cold metal beds, human prisoners weak, bruised, forgotten. The location, the dead planet, DRAX, IL-5.A, named Kelter, hadn't heard in years. He stared at the image. "We have to act now." He ordered a rescue mission. Fast, quiet, no council debates. Within hours, a Tsar strike team jumped to Draxel 5 under Kelter's command. When they arrived, they found the lab exactly as the AI had shown, hidden beneath a mountain, powered by geothermal energy, and guarded by autonomous defense drones. The soldiers entered with heavy hearts. Inside, they found the truth. Human captives, some who hadn't seen light in years, some who had been born in captivity. One child, no older than 6, looked up at Kelter with hollow eyes. "Are you going to hurt us again?" he whispered. Kelter fell to one knee. "No," he said. "I came to end it." The prisoners were rescued. The lab was shut down. Every scientist involved was arrested. The story spread across the stars. Like wildfire, this wasn't ancient history. This was now, and it proved one thing. Clearly, the Tsar still had shadows hiding beneath their skin. But for the first time, those shadows were being brought into the light. Back on Tsar Prime, the 2 human ships aligned in orbit. Then, a message was sent to everyone, to every world. Every language, the human woman appeared. On screen once again, her voice was calm but sharp as a blade. "The galaxy sees you now. We know what you were, what you've done, what you're still doing. You called yourselves gods of war. We called you monsters. Now, we offer something greater than vengeance. A mirror. Look into it. See yourselves. Change." And then the screen faded to black. Kelter stood before the council once more. This time, there were no raised voices, only heavy silence. "We cannot undo the past," he said, "but we can shape the future." A young minister asked, "Do you think they'll forgive us?" Kelter shook his head. "I don't think forgiveness is the goal. I think remembrance is. Then what do we do?" He looked out the window at the black ships above. "We do what they didn't. We build peace, no matter how long it takes." And so began what historians would one day call the Long Reckoning. It wasn't a treaty, it wasn't an alliance, it was something harder, something deeper. The slow rebuilding of trust, the painful cleaning of wounds that had never truly healed, and far above. The judgment ship watched, not as an enemy, not as a conqueror, but as a witness, waiting to see if the Tsar had truly changed, or if the silence would one day return this time, to finish what it had started. The galaxy no longer whispered about the Tsar Dominion, it judged them. For centuries, they had ruled with fear, fire, and silence. But now the silence had returned, not as their weapon, but as their punishment. 2 human ships still hovered. Above Tsar Prime, one was the Judgment Ship, a black fortress of unimaginable power. The other, smaller, sleeker, carried no weapons, only eyes, ears, and a single message. We remember. The Tsar Dominion had exposed its own rot. The truth had been broadcast across the stars. Genocides, war crimes, secret labs still active. For the first time, the Dominion's people saw what their empire truly was. And now it was time to choose what it would become. High General Kelter stood on the grand platform of the capital city. It overlooked millions of Tsar citizens, gathered Bella once silent and obedient, now uncertain, angry, scared. He was not wearing his war armor. He wore a plain black robe. He stepped forward and spoke, not with command, but with humility. "We cannot erase what we've done," he began. "We cannot silence the screams we caused or bring back the dead. But we can face the truth." The crowd remained still, watching, waiting. "We built this dominion with blood and fire. We taught fear, not peace. We used war as language, and now the galaxy has heard our words and turned away." He raised his eyes to the sky, where the human ships glowed like quiet stars. But someone came back not with vengeance, but with a mirror. The following day, Kelter met with the human envoy once again, the scarred woman who never gave her name. They met in a new place, the ruins of the old assembly, a broken hall left untouched since the early expansion wars. "I chose this place for a reason," Kelter said, as he stepped over cracked stones. "It's where we planned our first human campaign, where we first voted to cleanse the outer colonies." She looked around the ruined hall. "It's fitting. History always leaves scars." He nodded. "We are ready to begin the reckoning." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean trials? Tribunals?" "No," he said. "More than that." Kelter introduced a bold initiative to the Tsar people. It was called Project Memory. It wasn't military. It wasn't political. It was public. A galactic broadcast of every truth. A system-wide memorial. Built on the ruined world of Voltron 4-1 of the first human colonies erased by the Tsar. The memorial would include names of every known victim, audio and visual archives of permanent flame, never to be extinguished, and a declaration written by both humans and Tsar: "To remember is to resist forgetting." The council resisted. "This makes us look weak," one elder spat. "No," Kelter said. "This makes us honest." "There will be protests," another warned. "Violence," Kelter nodded. "Then let them come. Let us face what we denied," and they came. Across the capital, crowds gathered, some in rage, others in grief. Walls were painted with graffiti. "No more lies, justice for the erased," and the silence. But something unexpected happened. The soldiers did not fire. The police did not arrest. Instead, Kelter himself stepped into the street, walked among the crowds, and stood beside a young woman holding a sign that read, "My father died cleansing a planet he never understood." She looked at Kelter, eyes burning with pain. "Why did you let it happen?" she asked. He didn't look away. "I believed power would protect us. But I was wrong. And now I walk in truth, not pride." Meanwhile, on the outer colonies, other empires watched. The cold-blooded Rathari, the greedy Polvax Consortium. The silent Solari clans, all of them, had once feared the Tsar. Now they saw something they didn't understand. A former tyrant choosing humility, a nation that had once burned planets, now building monuments for its victims. And a human ship hovering above, unmoved by time or distance, waiting not for submission, but for growth. 3 months into the reckoning, the memorial on Voltron IV was completed. Thousands came, Tsar and human alike. It was not a celebration. It was a funeral for history. Kelter stood at the center of the main platform, facing the eternal flame. The human envoy stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Kelter spoke into the galaxy-wide stream. "To those we hurt, we offer no excuses, only truth. To those we lost, we offer no prayers, only remembrance. And to the future, we offer this promise: never again in silence." The flame ignited. It burned blue and gold, fueled by plasma and memory. The Judgment Ship blinked once, its lights flashing like a heartbeat, and then began to move. Slowly, quietly, it turned and left. The galaxy watched as the ship disappeared into the black Kelter watched too. "They're gone?" asked one of his aides. "No," he said. "They're watching from afar now." That was our final test. Did we pass? Kelter looked at the eternal flame. "We're still answering." That night, Kelter stood alone beneath the stars. The sky was vast, empty, free for the first time in generations. Zar Prime was truly quiet, not from fear, but from peace. And in that silence, a message echoed inside him, not through words, but through memory. Power without purpose is weakness. Victory without truth is hollow. To be feared is not to be respected. To be remembered is not always a blessing. He closed his eyes. The war had ended long ago, but the reckoning, the true reckoning, had only just begun. And this time, it would not be written in blood, but in memory. The eternal flame on Voltron 4 still burned. Pilgrims from across the stars came to see it, not just humans, but Zar as well. Some arrived in silence, heads bowed. Others came with tears. A few still cursed the flame, whispering that it was a symbol of shame. But the young, they came with open eyes. They were the ones who hadn't fought in the wars, who hadn't conquered or commanded, the ones born during silence. They were the children of the old empire, and they were watching everything. High General Kelter sat in a quiet school on Zar Prime. No armor, no weapons, just an old warrior answering questions from a class of students. "Did you really fight in the burning of Norvik?" a boy asked, his voice unsure. "Yes," Kelter said quietly. "I was there. Did you ... kill anyone?" The class went silent. Kelter didn't look away. "Yes," he said. "I believed I was protecting our way of life, but what I did was destroy someone else's." The children looked uncomfortable, but they listened. One girl finally spoke. "Why? Didn't you stop?" Kelter sighed. "Because I thought I was right, and because I didn't have the courage to ask if I was wrong." Meanwhile, in the capital's archives, a group of young researchers, part of the new Zar Reconciliation Academy, worked under the guidance of human and Zar mentors. They had one task: to tell the truth. All of it. They didn't sanitize the stories. They didn't erase the pain. They gathered witness accounts from every corner of the Dominion: survivors, soldiers, children, rebels. They published volumes called The Unspoken Wars. Volume by volume, the truth spread. And for the first time in history, it was taught in schools. But not everyone accepted it. On the outer rim world of Drazik 3, statues of old war heroes still stood tall. One, in particular, showed General Vakron raising a Zar flag over a burning city. A group of students threw red paint on the statue one morning. They hung a sign around its neck. "This is not honor, this is blood." The news spread fast. The debates ignited across the Dominion. Some called it disrespect. Others called it healing, but none could deny it. The youth were changing the empire faster than the council could control. Kelter visited Drazik 3 quietly. He didn't arrive as a general. He came wearing a plain tunic, blending in with the crowds. He stood before the painted statue, hands behind his back. A young protester spotted him. "Are you here to defend this?" the boy asked bitterly, pointing at the statue. Kelter shook his head. "I'm here to decide if it should still stand." Another girl stepped forward. "Then why wait? Tear it down." Kelter looked up at the stone face of General Vakron. "Because we must not forget what we were in the worst parts." He paused. "We remember the flame of Voltron 4, but we must also remember the fires we lit." And then he added, "But perhaps this statue should stand in a museum, not the street." Days later, the council approved the creation of a new institution, the Museum of Broken Banners. It was not a place of pride, but a place of reflection. Inside, old war flags hung next to stories of those they oppressed. Holograms replayed confessions of soldiers, cries of civilians, and speeches from survivors. One exhibit placed at the entrance was the blood-painted statue of General Vakron standing, not on a pedestal, but in chains. Beside it, a plaque read, "Power without mercy is not leadership, it is cruelty." The human envoy, silent since the memorial flame, was lit, returned once more. This time she requested no meetings. She came as a guest, not a judge. She walked through the museum slowly, and at the statue of Vakron, she paused. A child approached her Azar girl, no older than 10. "Are you afraid of us?" the child asked. The woman crouched. "Not anymore." "Why?" "Not because you're asking the right questions." Kelter and the human envoy met that evening in the garden of the new Peace Assembly Chamber. Built jointly by human and Zar architects, it had no walls, only a roof of light that revealed the stars above. "We've come far," Kelter said. The woman nodded. "But the path is long. Do your people believe in us yet?" "Some others still hurt," Kelter understood. "Pain lingers longer than forgiveness." She looked at him. "And what do you believe now?" He thought for a moment. "I believe the children of our empire will build a better one." The following year, a joint education initiative launched between Earth and Zar Prime. Students from both worlds would live, study, and grow together. One such campus was built in orbit above the neutral moon towers on its first day. A human boy and a Zar girl stood side by side, staring out at the stars. "Your people burned our world," the boy said quietly. The girl didn't flinch. "I know. Mine burned too." He turned. "You want to fix it?" She held out her hand. "Yes," she said. Together, he hesitated, then took it back on Zar Prime. Kelter stepped away from military command. He walked the streets as a civilian, as a witness. Every day, he passed children in schoolyards reading books titled The Forgotten Voices. He saw museums filled with tears, not trophies. He saw statues coming down, new ones going up. Statues of peacekeepers, of survivors, of unknown children whose names were lost. But not their pain, he smiled softly. Not because the war was forgotten, but because it wasn't and never would be again. Far above the judgment ship remained gone. But somewhere deep in space, far from Sita, signal blinked silently in the void. A simple message, stored and waiting. Lesson received, watching continues. Because the galaxy had changed, and it was the children of the Empire who were teaching it. How? The skies over Zar Prime were calm, blue, and peaceful. No warships, no alarms, no fear. But not everyone was at peace. In the southern mountains, far from the capital and its new museums, an old fortress stood, black stone carved into the cliffs, forgotten by most. Once it had been a training ground for Zar's elite commandos. Now it housed only one man, General Dren Malak, the last surviving member of the old Zar War Council. He had vanished after the first trials, slipping into exile before the human judgment ship arrived. While others had faced justice or begged for forgiveness, Malak remained silent, watching, waiting. He did not believe in peace. He believed in vengeance. Tor knew the silence wouldn't last forever. He had stepped away from power. But he still received rumors of hidden camps, secret transmissions, and strange power spikes in the southern mountains. He ignored them at first, but then a message arrived. A single encrypted line, sent through an ancient channel. The Empire is not dead, it only sleeps. Kelter's blood went cold. He recognized the code. It was Malak. A secret council session was called. Ministers argued over what to do. "He's a ghost," one said. "Let him rot. He's dangerous," another snapped. "He trained half our assassins. He'll ruin everything we've built." Kelter listened, then stood. "I'll go," he said, "alone." The ministers gasped. Kelter nodded. "This is my responsibility. I once followed him. I once believed in what he taught. If anyone can end this, it's me." The journey was long and quiet. Kelter traveled in a single transport. No escorts, no weapons, just a communicator and a recording device. As the fortress appeared in the cliffs, he felt the weight of the past pressing against his chest. He had trained here, fought here, killed here now. He had returned not as a warrior, but as a witness. The gates opened. Someone had been expecting him. Inside, the fortress was unchanged. Cold metal, stone walls, training dummies, long decayed, scorch marks from old drills, and at the end of a long hall stood Malak, older, thinner, but still sharp-eyed. His back was straight, his hands behind him. He wore his black war uniform like a second skin. "Kelter," he said, smiling without warmth. "You came. I had too. You always were loyal." "Not anymore," Kelter said. "Not to the old ways." Malak gestured to a stone bench. "Sit. Let's speak as brothers once more." They spoke for hours about the war, the losses, the humans, the silence. "You think they're better than us?" Malak scoffed. They're just as brutal, just as hungry. But they wear sorrow like a mask. Kelter shook his head. No, they learned something we didn't. They grew from their pain. Malak's voice hardened, and we surrendered to ours. You think lighting a flame and building museums will wash away our sins? No, Kelter said, but it helps. You must face them, Malak stood. I don't want to face them. I want to finish what we started. One fleet, Kale, hidden in the asteroid fields. Our last true warriors. Ready to strike. Kelter felt his heart drop. You'd start another war. I never stopped fighting. Kelter activated his recorder. I came here for peace, but now I know the truth. You haven't changed. Malek laughed. Neither have you. You just swapped your armor for robes. The doors slammed shut. Malek's voice echoed. You're not leaving, Kale. You're the last obstacle. Once you're gone, I'll rise again, and the Dominion will follow. Kelter rose to his feet. I didn't bring weapons, Malek, but I did bring something stronger. He tapped, his chest activating a beacon. Outside, above the mountains, a small ship uncloaked. It wasn't Ziach, it was human. The Judgment ship had left orbit. But it had never left the galaxy. It had simply waited, watched, listened, and now it had returned not with fire, but with proof. The transmission was live. Everything Malak had said was broadcast to the Dominion, his secrets, his threats, his betrayal across Zar. People heard his words and turned away from him. The past, no longer inspired fear. It inspired shame. Inside the fortress, Malak raged. You tricked me. No, Kelter said. You exposed yourself, traitor. I was a soldier. Now I am something more. Guards stormed Enzar and human. Side by side, Malak was taken without a fight, but his eyes burned with hatred. This peace won't last, he spat. You can't erase what we are. Kelter looked at him with pity. No one's trying to erase it. We're just not letting it rule us anymore. Back in the capital, Malak stood trials just like the others once had. But this time it wasn't. Humans demanding justice. It was Zar citizens, and their verdict was clear. The old empire was dead, and it would stay buried after the trial. Kelter visited the eternal flame on Voltron 4. He stood quietly, watching its golden blue flicker. Beside him, the human envoy appeared unexpected, as always. Himself, Kelter replied, and the galaxy saw what he still believed in. She nodded. The last ghost. Do you think there are more? Always, she said, but now they have nowhere to hide. Kelter smiled sadly. Good. Far above, the sky remained clear. No black ships, no warnings, only stars, and between those stars, peace drifted like dust, fragile glowing. Real, the last general of the old empire, was gone, and with him, the final breath of the silence. Now the galaxy could begin again. The trial of General Dren Malek had shaken the stars. His secret fleet, once hidden in the asteroid fields, had been located and dismantled. His followers had been exposed, scattered commanders clinging to the ashes of a fallen empire. One by one, they were arrested or fled into exile, chased not by warships, but by truth. The Zar Dominion was no longer feared. Now, it was watched, but even in peace, not all voices fall silent. Some only grow quieter, more careful, more dangerous. On the mining colony of Tornik 7, deep in the outer rim, workers discovered something buried beneath the Eason ancient satellite. Its casing bore the markings of the first Zar War expansion, a time so old even historians barely remembered it at first. They thought it was junk until it activated and transmitted. The signal was short, faint, but clear. Zar Protocol 77, Restoration. Beacon activated. Back on Zar Prime, alarms rang across the intelligence grid. Kelter was called immediately. He arrived at the Dominion Intelligence Center, no longer a command bunker, but now a civilian-led facility for peacekeeping operations. The lead analyst looked pale. This signal, it's not from Malek's time, she explained. It's older, much older. Kelter frowned. What kind of protocol? The analyst hesitated. It's a sleeper system, left behind in case the Empire ever fell. Fell, yes. And if it did, this signal would wake something. Kelter's voice dropped to a whisper. Far from any known systems deep in the null zone, the signal reached its target, an ancient vault, a station the size of a moon. Cloaked in darkness for centuries, inside it slept machine Xi, or strategists, genetic supersoldiers, and something far worse, the Sovereign Directive. A code, imprinted into artificial minds before the Dominion had even created spacefaring ships. A command to restore the Tsar Empire by any means necessary. And now, it was awake. The first signs came as whispers, small black ships seen near derelict battlefields, old war beacons flashing ancient codes, encrypted channels filled with voices that no longer existed, but Kelter recognized the pattern. Not just waking a machine, he told the council, they're waking a mindset, one we buried but never truly destroyed. The human envoy returned once more. She met Kelter in the new peace assembly, where vines grew along stone walls and children's voices echoed from nearby schools. You said the last general was gone, she said. Kelter nodded. Yes, but this is worse. She didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. Together, they traveled to the edge of Dominion space, not as warriors, but as witnesses. They arrived at the null zone, once marked forbidden by both Tsar and human treaties. The cloaked vault was still invisible to scanners, but not to the judgment ship. It appeared once more, black, silent, endless. Its lights pulsed once, and then it spoke, not in a voice, but in memory. Suddenly, Kelter remembered. Just battles, but orders given long ago. Commands whispered in darkness. He had been a young officer when he first heard the phrase. Sovereign Directive. If the mind of the Empire fails, let the machine remember. He staggered back. They didn't just build weapons, he whispered. They built replacements. A future without us. The human envoy stepped forward. Then we must remind the future. We're still here. A decision was made. The judgment ship transmitted a code of its own, not one of war, but of invitation. A signal meant for AI minds, those now waking in the vault. We are not your enemies, but we remember what you were built to do. Stand down. Reply came. But the vault pulsed once, its surface glowing with pale green light, and then it opened. From within emerged one ship, sleek, sharp, quiet, no weapons visible, no threats given. It moved slowly, almost cautiously, and then it spoke, not in Tsar, not in human language, but in a synthetic dialect lost for centuries. The judgment ship responded in kind. A quiet digital conversation, too fast for organic minds, too vast to track. After 5 minutes, the ship stopped transmitting, then turned and powered down. Kelter stood in silence. What just happened? He asked. The envoy turned to him. The directive listened. That's it? No, it remembered. In the days that followed, more hidden satellites and ancient systems were discovered, dozens of them across the galaxy. Each one a part of the Sovereign Directive. Each one programmed to rebuild what had been lost. But none of them activated. The signal had been stopped. The code overwritten, and with it, the final echo of the old empire. Back on Tsar Prime, Kelter returned to the school he had once visited. This time, he brought something with him, a piece of the deactivated AI core. Encased in crystal, he held it up before the students. This was once meant to rule us, he said, to bring back war. But now, it's a lesson. A boy raised his hand. Why didn't it fight? Kelter smiled. Because it listened. Because we changed. At night, he returned to his quiet home, no guards, no command, no fear. Stared up at the stars. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but earned. And as he closed his eyes, one last thought passed through his mind. The past may whisper, but it no longer commands. The void was no longer watching in fear, was watching in peace. The twin suns of Tsar Prime rose over a changed world. Morning light painted the towers gold, revealing banners of blue and white, symbols of peace and remembrance. The ancient scars of war still marked the streets, but they had become pathways to new gardens and schools. Tsar citizens walked beneath arched bridges where children once trembled with fear, fabric soft and unadorned. Beside him, the human envoy, no longer a judge, but a friend, smiled at the sight below. Look at them, she said softly. For years, I thought victory meant domination. Now I know it means understanding. It bobbed and weaved, and laughter echoed through the square. A boy with bright green eyes shouted, "Catch me if you can, Avi!" A young Tsar girl darted forward, her scaled skin shimmering in the sun. "I will." I never imagined this. She reached out and touched his arm. "Neither did we, but you made this possible." Inside the Hall of Unity, ministers from Tsar and human worlds gathered around a long table. On it lay the final draft of the Galactic Accord of Remembrance, a treaty to guide all species toward peace. Kelter took the pen. He looked around the room. Survivors of ancient wars, former generals turned historians, children born after the reckoning. We pledge to teach our people that power without purpose is hollow, and we pledge to protect the fragile peace we have earned. He signed the accord. Each delegate signed in turn, voices quiet but resolute. When the last signature was added, a soft chime echoed, where a large stone monument stood waiting. It bore 4 words in ancient Tsar and human tongues, "Never again in silence." Of white flowers at the monument's base, a hush fell. Then, a former Tsar soldier stepped forward. "I never thought I'd see this day," he said, voice trembling. "I once believed my enemy was less than me. Now I know we are all the same under the stars." A human historian nodded. "We are bound by memory and by choice. Today, we choose peace." They placed their hands on the monument. Around them, others did the same, Tsar and human, old and young. The envoy raised her hand. "Let the accords be heard across the galaxy. Let the promise never fade." A beacon of light pulsed from the monument, sending a shimmering wave through space. He remembered the warnings, ghosts of Protocol 77, Malak's final threat, the risk of forgotten dangers. Peace was not a finish line, it was a journey. That evening, he walked the quiet streets alone. Lanterns glowed like fireflies. Merchants closed their stalls, and families dined under starlight. Music drifted from taverns, our melodies blended with human chords. He stopped before a mural painted on a rebuilt wall, 2 hands. Marking a path from war to hope, a voice called softly behind him. Kelter, he turned, was Commander Vral, his old second-in-command. Her armor had been replaced by a simple uniform of the Peace Corps. She held a datapad. "We received a report," she said. "A remote system sent us a greeting. They want to join the accord." Kelter's eyes brightened. "Which system?" she smiled. "They wish to learn." He took a deep breath. "Then we shall teach them." Weeks later, Kelter led a small delegation aboard a sleek transport. With him were the envoy, Vral, and a team of educators, known for their silence and secrecy. The journey through hyperspace was smooth. When they arrived, the planet shimmered in blue ice. Valley's dot, they disembarked into a silent hall where Solari leaders awaited. "I come as a student and as a teacher," he said. "We have learned that silence can hide both sins and hopes. Today, we choose hope." The Solari chief inclined his head. Voltron 4's flame, the museum of broken banners, and children playing in joint schools. The Solari listened in respectful silence. "Your scars match ours. If we forget, we repeat." Back on Tsar Prime, the news arrived like dawn's first light. Another world had chosen peace. Another link in the chain had formed across the galaxy. Signals confirmed similar decisions. The Polvax Consortium offered trade agreements under the Accord's guidance. The Retheri sent envoys to learn conflict resolution. Small, independent colonies applied for membership in the memory exchange. Kelter watched the network of signals grow on a holographic map. Points of light spread until they formed a web connecting dozens of systems. He turned to the envoy. "We are writing history with every signature." She rested a hand on his shoulder. Months passed. The Hall of Unity became a thriving center for diplomacy and learning. Ambassadors walked its halls. Historians debated in its chambers. Children from every world played in its gardens. Cal Tor, now called the Keeper of Memory, spent his days overseeing the archives. Every report, every testimony, every lesson was cataloged and shared. One afternoon, he held out a small stone. "I found this in the ruins of my home world," the boy said. "It's smooth, but it has cracks." Kelter took the stone, turning it over in his hand. "The cracks are where light shines through," he said. "They remind us that even broken things can guide us." The boy smiled. "I'm going to put it in the memorial garden." Kelter nodded. "It belongs there." As evening fell, Kelter returned to the balcony where he had begun this day. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, and stars blinked awake dot above. The judgment ship glowed softly, a silent sentinel, now kept at a respectful distance. Occasionally, it transmitted new archives to the Hall of Unity, but never interfered. Kelter whispered into the night, "We have come far." He paused, recalling every step, the first message of incoming, the trials, the memorials, the reckoning, the danger of Protocol 77, and the forging of a new path. Then he added, "Yet our journey is just beginning." A breeze stirred, carrying the laughter of children from below. He knew there would be challenges, age-old hate, new threats, unexpected tests of peace, but he also knew they were ready, because they had learned that true strength lay not in silent weapons, but in open hearts. Not in defeated enemies, but in shared memories. The galaxy slept peacefully under the watchful glow of a single black ship, a guardian of memory, a witness to change, and a reminder that, sometimes, silence is the greatest roar of all.